We're live. Hey, hey, hey. Welcome
Hey
to
guys.
yet another webinar, the Regrid Webinar. And today we're going to be talking about our launch from this morning. We formally announced, not exactly a new launch for us, but more like formalizing and announcing our nonprofit and academia and research support program, Data with Purpose. If you haven't had a chance to read about it, we'll put all the relevant links right here. Nick has already put the link to the landing page, but we'll make sure to add the press release and our blog because that does a good job of explaining what the program is about. But so will we on this webinar. We'll cover all things data with purpose. And let's jump right into it. So Jerry, this has been a part of our DNA. That's why I touched upon how this is not entirely new to us. We sort of started this way and we are finally formalizing it, but we've been doing this all along. And Nick, you've been overseeing this program for a while, but you've also been instrumental in some of the earlier customers that technically fall under data with purpose. And we've kind of taken care of those customers and provided our services. So we have the right people here for this webinar to discuss this, and let's jump right into this. So let's start right there. What is data with purpose, and why did we decide to do this now, like formalize it?
Sure. Well, I'll jump in by saying, like, I kind of feel like we're returning to roots that we never really left. And so what we're doing here with Data with Purpose is we've built a big, friendly front door for nonprofits that want to work with our nationwide land parcel data set, but might not have the budget to do so, might not have the budget to pay sticker price. We really want to meet these kinds of mission-driven, nonprofit, academic, community organizations where they are. So I would say big friendly front door is kind of like my fast way to say it, as opposed to going to a website where there's big price tags, there's lots of information, it kind of looks like it's for businesses and you don't know where to fit in. We have created a door where you can knock and a friendly person will answer and help meet you where you are.
Yeah. Nick, anything to add to that?
Not really. I think that's a pretty good summary. I mean, you know, to reiterate what Jerry said, I think like it's nice to have a more formalized program. You know, I for the past couple of years, we've been doing a lot of this work, but it's been pretty ad hoc and on a case-by-case basis. And I think that as the company grows and we sort of professionalize other things, it became like more and more critical that we figure out a way to do the same to help people in sort of these regards, right? Like we are still really interested in academic research. We're still really interested in doing good with the things that we have available to us.
Yeah.
And really the key became like, how do we scale this up and sort of put a framework around it, right? So that's really, to me, what's happening here.
Yeah, it needs to be sustainable and sane for all parties. And, you know, to hop in the time machine and just kind of go back into Regrid and at the time Loveland's history, we got to start growing this business and the data set and our software primarily working with these kinds of groups as customers, as our only customers.
Yeah.
And so we know very well all of the challenges and the long decision-making timelines and the different stakeholders and the budget constraints that come with doing important mission-driven nonprofit and research work. And I would dare say that one of the things that got our company going was an observation that there was a general asymmetry that existed around who had access to information about land. It was like, even though stuff was in the public record and should be more accessible, really only well-capitalized businesses were able to buy it. And sort of the data vendor ecosystem sort of turned like a sunflower towards that sun and said, you know, this is more money, let's service that. And I fully get it. I mean, that's helped our business grow a lot. Like we had to like figure out how to get there too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we haven't forgotten that asymmetry can actually, I'm not going to try to overblow it, but I truly think it can be corrosive to society if there's only a subset of actors who understands who owns the earth and how things are subdivided and how land is used and how to put that into a research environment. And so really this is like, how do we still grow the business selling to other businesses, but have that big front door here where we'll work with you too. And there's a logic to it and there's passion for it. So yeah.
All right, so then let's talk a little bit about the process. So how does one get in touch? How does one apply to this program and who can apply?
Yeah, so I mean, the short answer is go to regrid.com/purpose, and at the bottom of the page you'll find a friendly application form. Is really the fastest answer here.
Yeah.
And in that form, we'll ask a bunch of questions that'll help us determine whether or not you're a good fit for the program. And Jerry, you can elaborate more, but basically it's all common sense stuff, right? Like we're asking sort of like, who are you? What are your past credentials? Where are you coming from? What organization are you associated with? Are you a group that falls into this general framework? And then like, what's your project? What do you want to do with it? What's your time frame looking like? And if that all, works well, we would consider. The other portion here that maybe we can go into a bit more depth about is sort of like the pay what you can component, right? Because it's not intended necessarily for this to be free throwing data out the door to anybody who asks, but really we're asking for folks to do like a self-assessment and be like, what can we meaningfully contribute here, right? And I don't know, Jerry, if you have any other thoughts about that.
I do, because I do feel like this is one of these things that kind of like sets us apart in our evolution of just kind of how we approach the marketplace in general. So one thing we do for businesses is that we do have transparent pricing for our data products, which is a little bit unusual in the space. People may not know, but usually the way the business works is a little bit more of like, knock, knock, I'm interested in this. Okay, who are you? How much money do I think I can get from you? And we've sort of taken a different approach on that. That's more transparent. Similarly here, I think we're putting a lot of trust in the nonprofit parties to do an honest self-assessment, because we do want to be clear, like Nick said, it's not a data for free, just fling it over the fence kind of a thing. It's really like you assess what you're trying to get done, what your organization actually has as a budget. And again, you can see the prices that we have, our sticker prices on the site. They're not secret. And what we're looking for are people to give honest budgets that seem commensurate to the size of their organization and the value that will be derived from the data. And yes, there's a bit of an art in that for both parties, right? There's an art in that for the self-assessment, what's honest from the person who's applying. And there's also an art from our side too. But I think one of the things, in addition to like $1 savings, depending on budgets, is also that we're committing to a time savings here. Because the frank reality is that if you approach a data vendor interested in anything, you're going to go through a fairly lengthy sales cycle. And the truth of the matter is too, if you are a nonprofit or a researcher who can't pay full sticker price, that process is 9 out of 10 times going to be even a lot longer for you, because you're just not going to be a priority. And so I think in addition to the dollar savings, what we're also putting forward here is a time savings. There's not a lot of mystery behind the curtain here. Nick's not the only one working on this program. Our colleague Luke, who works with the sales team, is working on it. We have others who will see things, but honestly, you submit an application, it's not a dense bureaucracy that you're going to run through. The team is going to put eyes on it. Nick's going to put eyes on it. Luke's going to put eyes on it. They're going to talk about it. Does this seem sane? Is this interesting? Does this look like a real thing? Does the budget seem sincere? Does it allow us to provide what's being asked for in a way that doesn't pull us underwater as well? And if all those things are true, we'll get back to you really quickly, likely with a positive answer. And if all those things are not the case, we'll still get back quickly. We may have additional questions, right? We may know off the jump that like, it's just, our data is not going to solve the problem that you have. But even then, I'd like to think that we'll give, some helpful pointers about where else you might go, right? Like if we can't service you.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. I do have a couple of questions here from our registrants. Yeah. So one, Justin, please go ahead and repost our blog. Let us know what you need to do that. Meg or I, one of us from our team will get in touch with you. Thank you, Justin. The second question is from Trish DeWald. So I'm a human who is connected to lots of nonprofit organizations, but not a human who uses parcel data. So what kind of NPOs do you imagine would benefit from tapping into your open front door? Very good question.
Sure. You got it. And first off, hey, Justin, and hey, Trish. I think I know who the Justin and Trishes are here, so good to hear from you. So this is a great question, because we don't take for granted that like land and spatial information is something that every single organization or project needs. However, I will say that broadly speaking, in almost any domain, people have location in their work processes. Maybe properties that a nonprofit owns, and maybe people that they need to get resources out to or survey. It may be responding to events that happen in the world, you know, be they weather events or emergency response or whatever the case is. Things have locations. And in this kind of stack of like what you can know about locations, land parcel data actually has like deceptively deep and interesting qualities to it, because you can find out who owns buildings, you can find out what kind of land use a certain kind of property has. They become very like legible. They've got addresses, so like they're very helpful for like matching other kinds of location data too. And just as far as like for specific verticals that like we are thinking about, and these are the kinds of folks who have reached out to us like already that we've been working with. There are lots of nonprofits and researchers working on climate change preparation and resiliency. You know, waters will be rising to some degree. Weather events appear to be getting more extreme, and even if they're not, they're already extreme too frequently. And every time those kinds of things happen, people come looking for property information. How many houses were affected? Which properties were affected? And that's both from like a first responder kind of side and like a government rebuild and community group kind of side. Land conservation, ecological conservation. You know, these are some, I think for the team, these are really fun ones for us to work with, because we know a little bit about that world and have a passion for it. But people who are trying to protect spaces, create more public lands, trying to protect nature, do land acquisition for those purposes. Great example there. And you know, I'd be remiss not to mention just housing in general. You know, a lot of Regrid's work, again, starting as Loveland Technologies, was doing a lot of foreclosure prevention, property tax understanding, keeping people in homes, trying to rehabilitate vacant properties, address vacant properties, vacant buildings, things of that nature. And we also have some examples that you might not like expect. Like we have, I don't know if it's appropriate to mention their name or not here, so I guess I'll keep it in the sleeve. But you know, we work with groups like food banks who end up, you know, they service populations coming from like large regions, and in that line of work, they try to understand, you know, what addresses and communities people are coming from, and if there are any kind of clear you know, issues or what's going on in those places. So there, even something as like seemingly simple and direct as like getting food distributed to a population can have a heavy location, address and property component to it. So I'll polish that pitch for you, Trish, because it is, you know, we're so far into parcel and land world that sometimes I think we kind of take things for granted. Like I know that I can, but I feel like it is pretty broad, the kinds of nonprofits that we can serve. And Nick, would you add any on to that from your perspective?
I think those are pretty good examples. The only thing that I might add, like as potential additional nuance, is just that, you know, to recognize the fact that maybe not 100% of projects will benefit from parcel data, right? And so one of the things that we inherently are sort of doing here is with data with purpose, you know, we're sort of, the model is you have a project and then you come to us and sort of like have an idea of how the parcel data can be used in your project. You know, that's sort of like one of the shaping things. But more generally, I guess I would agree that there's like all kinds of ways that some kind of parcel-based setup is really useful for people in a broader range of fields than you might think, right? Like it's pretty obvious like why it's helpful to know who owns the properties, right? If you're doing land conservation. But it's been interesting to see some of the early demand that we've seen with data with purpose for research is sort of as you alluded to, right? Like it's like using parcels almost as like little pixels to give you like a better overview of like a larger area, or doing other things where like really, because they're the foundational building blocks of land, that it's sort of like one input that then you can take in a lot of directions, right? Like it's really just one thing you can build whatever you care about on top of.
Yeah, I mean, just to step back on it again, I guess, because like sometimes I think this is cheesy to say, and other times I'm like, no, this is not cheesy to say. This is like why this work is interesting and important, is that like literally this parcel data covers like all the land in the entire country. So if something is happening like anywhere besides the middle of the street, it's going to tie back in some potentially meaningful way to the building or the property or the owner or the et cetera. And I think that part of the reason why nonprofits and many organizations haven't like made the leap, because you might be in a situation where it's just not clear. You're like, maybe that stuff is cool for me, but we've never been able to test it because I'm not going to experiment by paying $100,000 to see if it improves our workflows, right? I'm just not going to do that. So I feel like sometimes things don't get put into workflows just because the price is exorbitant and you haven't had the experience with it. So I hope that we'll see more organizations try to put this kind of data into their workflow by making it more accessible.
Yeah, and that's the main goal and purpose for us behind this program, is to make our data and our solutions more accessible and available to everyone who needs it. And even if you don't need it, or you think you don't need it, always reach out, and we'll help you assess that and evaluate that as well. In some cases, like in some of the climate change use cases, or emergency relief cases, parcel data is fundamental. But that might not be the only data layer you'll need. You'll probably need something else in addition to parcel data. But we want to help you start there, get that faster, make it more accessible, and be able to see the research flourish and grow from there.
And just to underline this too, I'll say, I know this might sound like a bit like crazy to some people, because it does seem like there should be like one accessible nationwide land parcel data set with buildings and addresses and owners and all that kind of stuff that is available during emergencies. And the truth of the matter is that there's absolutely not. For a number of years, we used to kind of like navigate the situation where, like, if something, if there was a hurricane or a flood or a fire or some sort of event, like we would like kind of like look and see, like, is there anybody obvious that we could reach out to say, like, hey, would it be useful to get the parcel file for your entire state or for these counties? And, oftentimes when we could make that connection, the answer would be yes, because things would be so fragmented on the ground that it wasn't really possible. And so people didn't know how many, individual homes and properties and things were being affected by events like that. And it always was surprising to us. It was like, why do we even have to do something like that? And so I think what we're realizing, and part of the goal with this project, is that we can interface with nonprofits that, both smaller footprint, but also national nonprofits, who can like help deploy this data to those who need it when they need it, and not have to like reinvent the wheel of outreach ourselves every time.
We did put in a link that points directly to some of our customers who worked with us using this program. We can put that link in there again. Thank you, Meg. But yeah, you can look up some of the examples of the different, various use cases that comes under this program. All right. Anything else to cover, Nick? Anything from your own personal experience so far? Something important?
I think that's mostly the long and the short of it. I would say too that something that we sort of like mentioned, but I guess like might be worth specifically calling out too, is just sort of like, as Jerry was saying, the nationwide parcel fabric is like a really something interesting that we feel there's a lot of legs for. But within the organization, we don't really have like an analysis department who can run the numbers on things nationwide, which is one of the ways that it's really compelling. Like we have the data, we can hook somebody up with it, but we're not crunching numbers on things nationwide that could be crunched easily, right? And so like as a, it is not really like a vertical, but it's like a segment of things that we would love to see flourish by making this data available, not at sticker, It's
an entirely new capability, I guess, for somebody to be able to integrate like true nationwide property boundary ownership and other information into a process, which again, I just didn't think like most people wouldn't even think about doing it, because it was just, you would never have access to it, right? And the list of things too. I mean, we're open to entertaining all nonprofit and research purposes that come up. I mean, we mentioned a number: climate change, emergency response, land conservation, housing justice. There's also like, I view this as a way to like get more engaged with like pressing national issues. People are actively trying to close the digital divide once and for all right now, right? We're trying to transition over to renewable energy, and just think about like, how are we actually going to like harness and deliver this kind of energy? And each one of these things is like a planning exercise that requires an understanding of land. And it's really like, not to like blow it out too big, but I think part of the reason why we do this and why we're excited about it is that it's like playing a role in planning for the rest of the 21st century for the country. Because even if it's not the only thing that you need, it's a necessary ingredient in that work. It just is. So that's what makes it fun. And I guess I'll add on that too, that the other thing that we want to like get into with this program is also like promoting and helping to like tell stories about the work that these organizations and researchers are doing. It's fun when you're doing public spirited work. You want people to know about it, and we like showcasing these things. So that's something else too. I wouldn't say it's the primary thing to like expect from us here, because you should definitely be promoting yourselves through many other channels, but it's something that we're happy and proud to do is highlight the work that people are doing with this data.
For sure.
Perfect. With that, I would like to put out put a call out to all the NPOs and projects and research projects out there. This is something that this is why we formally announced this, is so this can catch everyone's eye, and whoever needs this data can feel free to reach out to us. So all the links are embedded here. You can find them on our site. You can find them in all of our announcements that went out this afternoon, our social media posts. So reach out to us and we'll get the conversation started.
And Sahana, just to, piggyback on that a little bit, like, and don't be shy about doing it. Like, I think that the Regrid team does a good job of this, both for just, a more traditional business inquiry, a company that reaches out, like being quick and being friendly. But I know what it's like to sit down at a website. I always laugh when I try to reach out to a service provider. Well, I don't always laugh, but I'm always interested when I go to reach out to a service provider as a potential customer to see how that experience goes. And I'm never surprised by what happens, because sometimes it's prompt and nice, sometimes it's very cold, and sometimes it's like nobody ever gets back, right? And so I know that feeling of is it even worth my time to fill out this stupid form, right? Like, is somebody actually read this? Am I going to hear back? And I would just, echoing Sahana's invitation, that if you are a nonprofit, researcher, community group, any of this NPO, NGO category, it's worth your time to fill out that form, because we'll read it quickly and get back to you quickly, and you won't have to stare your shoes or wonder if anybody got it and if it's going to work out. We'll make sure that that's prompt.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, to that point, we'll be not only friendly and prompt, and not only am I likely to have it come across my inbox and read it, same day or within a couple of days, but also we'll be pretty straight up if it's something we can't do, either because of budgetary constraints or because it's going to be logistically difficult or whatever. But we, like Jerry said earlier, we're super down to point you in the right direction, even if it's not a good fit, So either way, fill it out, and it's not going to be a waste of time for you.
We do have a question, Nick, from Stephanie. What exactly can the software data give for community development, housing repairs, and income?
Sure. So I'm assuming by give here we mean offer. Like, what can how can it be helpful? And I think the answer is very broad. There's a lot of different levels of engagement you could do. The most basic one, right, is if you're on the ground in a neighborhood, you need to know things like value and ownership in order to make decisions about what's going on in your neighborhood. Yeah. So that's the implement, literally download the app and you're good to go there. But there's obviously many tiers of complexity that you can go up. And, Jerry can speak more to it, right? But we've done larger scale projects for this type of stuff as well. So.
And I'll mention too, because for the software, primarily with Data with Purpose, we're talking about access to large scale data files that people can put into their own systems. For the software, the pro accounts that you'll see on our site and the mobile app, we already seek to price those at very accessible rates. So that's basically a $100 a year kind of account. And for a home repair project, Nick mentioned some of the uses there, but also the ability to collect information and photography as you're doing work. So basically, if you have, a pro account, or if you add seats to it and it becomes a team account, that's something that everybody that you're working with can go to the properties they're supposed to go to, take pictures, make notes. All those pictures and notes will tie back to that particular property, in your account. And so you can actually do property inventories and keep all that data clean, and then use that to get your job done and keep things organized. And so it's connected to a little bit separate from the data products, but we definitely encourage nonprofits to look at that, because frankly, the kind of pricing, the approach, and the software stuff that we could develop for nonprofits sort of back in the day, relatively, right? So we've tried to keep that part very accessible. But I guess it is important to say too, if somebody has an idea for a project that requires large scale software or customization, and it's a nonprofit purpose, let us know about that as well, right? Because this is not, I think we're kind of keeping this open-ended in a good way, meaning that we're not precluding anything from the jump. And again, if we don't feel like we can service it properly, we'll just let you know.
Yeah. And then maybe just to round out, so Stephanie commented underneath. And so if you're trying to make sure that the target area matches the grant requirements for income, I would probably recommend that you start looking at census data there, which is something that we sort of offer, but probably isn't going to be part of the scope of data with purpose. Because really, when you're talking about income, that's like something that doesn't get tagged to parcels so much as it does like calculated by the census at a higher level. But you could, for sure. Yeah, exactly right. With UCHC,
yeah, that's right.
It's exactly that kind of thing, right? Where you're like, one level is the census data you can get for free, and then another layer might be this kind of parcel data or software, right?
Yep. And shout out to UCHC, Stephanie, because that's an organization that we love, Ted and team, and that would be an example of coming up in the nonprofit and community world, working on tax foreclosure issues and keeping people in homes. We love the work that you guys do, and it's an inspiration for all this. How do we make sure that we can service organizations like UCHC writ large in a way that makes sense for everybody is the thought process.
Yeah.
All right. If there are no more questions, I guess we can wrap this up.
Sounds good. Yeah. Moral of the story, let your, even if it doesn't relate to you specifically, if you Trish, like you asked, like you're around nonprofits and networks, like let people know about this. I mean, it's a very easy thing to share. Hopefully it's succinctly laid out. If you have ideas for how to make it like tighter on the regrid.com/purpose page, let us know. But, we want to see it distributed because the posture and the intention on this is really to like get the data out to more folks doing good stuff who otherwise wouldn't be able to access it or afford it. So,
yeah.
Certainly. All right. Thank you all. All the links are here. Regrid.com/purpose. Please check it out. If you know somebody who could use this, please send it to them. We would love to see more applications come through and love to see more work and research work happening through our data.
And good to see everybody in the chat too. Good to see you, Justin, Stephanie, Trish, everybody. Catch you guys later. Bye, Sahana.
See ya.
Bye, Nick.
See you.